2-0 series. I'm calling game 3. Yes, game 3 in Phoenix on Friday. Very excited about that. No CP. How much of a difference does that make or not make to you with not necessarily the ability to win this series, but just the ability to maybe get back into this series this weekend?
Yeah. I think, well, it's a huge loss, I think, because of the way he organizes them. Right? They get a little too quick with just trying to hit the home run ball when he's not on the court, and you saw that at the end of game 2. I just didn't like the way their offense operated at all. So they're going to miss that tremendously. I think it's time for Kevin Durant, right, to have one of those nights in game 3. I almost think he has to. To my point, how many games have the Phoenix Suns played so far in the postseason? How many of those games has he been their best player? Maybe one. Booker has been the guy, right? And I don't know if that's the formula for them to get back in the series or win the series or get to the finals. So I think Durant, and I think he very much recognized that. I didn't like the look on his face and the body language a little bit in game 2.
Interesting.
He looked stressed out or something to me. He did.
Really?
Yeah, he just did.
Dude.
Yeah.
I'm not being combative.
He had a weird
right
look
now,
on his face.
but it's so weird because I am obsessed with body language.
Yeah, so am I.
And I'm obsessed with expressions. And it's one of the reasons I love calling games, because I'm so close that I get to see the interactions you can't see on TV.
Totally.
And I'm obsessed with it. I love watching teams huddles. I love watching players come out of huddles. I'm obsessed with it. And I didn't notice anything in game 2.
Well, first of all,
I didn't notice anything.
I think you and I are like separated at birth in a lot of ways because I'm a diehard football fan. Talk about all the time, Washington Commanders. Yeah. So I go to every game and I have a pair of binoculars I take for one reason. I want to see the interaction of these dudes when they come off the field, like especially when Carson Wentz was there, because it was obvious to me immediately no one liked him. And I'm like, that's a problem. Like, he'd have a bad 3 and out, and no one is like dapping him up coming off the field. And he'd sit on the bench, and the only guy to come over to talk to was Taylor Heineke, like his backup. And I'm going, that's a really bad sign. Like, so I'm big on stuff like that. There was something about it, man. I didn't like the way he was presenting himself. I just didn't. And I think he's probably right now stewing about the position they're in. He's going to be the one that's going to have to carry this into the summer. And look, I don't think this is win at all costs this year for them because he's locked up and Booker's locked up. And so it's a matter of improving their team. And as long as he wins one while he's in Phoenix over the next 2 or 3 years, it will be a success, right? It'll be worth everything because that franchise never won a championship. So it doesn't have to be this year, but he'll still take the brunt of the criticism. We all know that. Even without Chris Paul, it'll be a little bit muffled because he's got a little bit of an excuse, they'll say. He's still going to get beat up because that's just the nature of it. So he's probably stewing right now, thinking the same thing that I just said, which is, all right, man, enough's enough. He hasn't been the best player on the floor yet. I think that's who Kevin Durant's going to be in game 3, and he's going to have to be, I think, for them to get a win and feel like they're in this series because they got outplayed badly in game 1. They had no answer defensively. Last game, it was more their offense let them down.
Yeah. I mentioned the second spectrum, QSI, QSQ, all that stuff. So in game 2, he was 2 for 12 from 3, 10 of 27 overall. The shots he missed, essentially based on the looks, because we have the tracking data where we can say, all right, he's open by 7.5 feet, or that was a heavy contest or a wide open versus open. We have all that stuff. He was 16.8 percentage points less than the expected. The average Kevin Durant shooting game, he was 17 percentage points less than expected. So I think maybe if there was frustration, maybe it was just because he was missing fucking open shots, guy.
Yeah, maybe.
Because I saw interactions with him and Book, even when it was heavy there in the fourth, as Denver was kind of pulling away, like it looked good to me. I don't know. I'm not. Again, I didn't see that.
Well, when you get out there, just go up to him before the game, put your arm around him, say, "Listen, Legs is concerned. He said you look a little stressed. Is everything okay? Like, what's going on?" And he's gonna say, "No, motherfucker, we're down 2-0. It's not okay." That's what you're saying, and I think that's probably true. Like, and I think he was just like, I think also it seemed like they were running in mud a little bit offensively because it was a low-scoring game and they just couldn't get anything going. They couldn't sustain a run.
This is what I really wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
Because we briefly talked about it yesterday. So, happens a lot in the regular season. It happens a lot more in the playoffs. The targeting and the matchup hunting that we see from a lot of teams. I think it's one of the reasons that at times the Celtics struggle down the stretch, because there's a difference to me. And Phoenix, in game 2 at times in that fourth, it was like, all right, Book, go get a bucket, or KD, go get a bucket. There's a difference to me between bringing a guy up, getting the matchup you want, and then going one-on-one with a set defense at the top of the key or on the wing, right? Everybody's dialing, everybody's looking at you. 3 guys
locked in, staring at you. Yeah.
Like, there's a difference. And look, I don't have the numbers in front of me. It feels like at the end of game, a lot of teams do that, and I don't feel like it's very efficient.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways to me to mix in a different way to target and find the mismatch you want. For example, let's say you want Jamal Murray on Kevin Durant. Can you set an Iverson cut screen at the foul line and have Kevin curl to an open wing and catch and go against either no switch or against a switch with Jamal Murray? Can you do that? I loved in one of the Boston games, they wanted Trey in the action, but instead of just bringing him up where he was going to show 3 times and eventually with 4 seconds left on the shot clock, he'd switch, right? We see that all the time. They put him as the screener in Spain action.
Right.
They put his guy as the screener in Spain action. So then if they do switch, it's late and Tatum's at 8 feet or Brown's at 8 feet. Like I like that so much more than just the dead ball, look at a guy, look at 4 guys at boxes and elbows. I think I would like to see more, and I think Monty has done this historically with Book. I didn't see a ton of that in game 2.
That was pretty much all you saw in the fourth quarter is what you're talking about. That get maybe one screen, maybe not. Maybe just advance the ball to one guy, either Booker or Durant, and now just go. And if you could take a still picture of any of those possessions, it's exactly what they were looking at behind them. 3 guys, one guy on the edge lane, one guy at the elbow, one guy like on the opposite block or middle of the lane, just staring at you. Now go make an incredibly difficult contested jumper. And then they started running guys at Durant once he put it down. So everything was a lean back. He fell down a couple times shooting jump shots because he was leaning back that far. To your point earlier about Chris Paul, one of the Suns' favorite actions they like to run is Devin Booker starts down on the baseline. Chris Paul will take it toward the wing, and Booker will either set an up screen for Ayton and then pop out, catch it, and then immediately get another ball screen from the other elbow at the same time that whoever was in that strong side is emptying out. So he comes off and it's so quick hitting. They got to make quick decisions defensively. He comes off, maybe he gets the matchup he wants, but more importantly, he's got the whole side to himself now and he's got space. With Chris Paul off the floor, Booker was the guy bringing the ball up the court all the time. So immediately he was coming up trying to think about scoring because they were in that situation we need to get a bucket here. It's critical. It's a low-scoring game. Every possession was heightened. We got to match. We got to get a bucket here. So it's immediately all that pre-action motion and movement that makes it easier for shooters to catch the ball when someone's now running at them or if you've gotten some space. He didn't really get any of that. Everything was off the dribble, hand in his face, draped on him. Same with Durant. And so now what's the adjustment going to be for Monty? Chris Paul can't go in game 3 because it can't look like that the entire game because they have no shot. They'll get swept if that's how they plan on trying to beat the Denver Nuggets. Just these 2 guys, I joke all the time, be great is not a play set, right? That's not good enough. You got to help them with some action. And so, if Chris Paul's not there, that makes it a lot harder.
Is there a world, and maybe this is too optimistic, but it's a Ross or Campaign or someone like that who has not either played or played particularly well over the last few games where they offer a different look offensively than somebody like Chris, and you can actually open up the bench a little bit?
Yeah, you can. And Cameron Payne is one of those guys right now. I mean, he's definitely struggling a little bit, right? But it's amazing how especially if you know for 48 hours, Chris isn't playing.
Yeah.
like what that does for you, like the pressure you're putting yourself on in limited minutes, and when you're not playing well, kind of snowballs against you because you want it to happen so badly, and you're squeezing the ball too tight, and that's kind of what Cameron Payne looks like a little bit. He missed a couple of drives like to his left hand that he usually makes with his eyes closed. He missed. I think he's pressing, but now it's like, well, they have no one else to go to. Like, and you have that talk, put your arm around him at shoot around the day yesterday, and it's like, hey, man, it's going to be you right here going forward. They have a lot of faith in you. It's amazing how that can maybe help jumpstart you and get you a little bit more relaxed. So he'll probably play better in Game 3.
So the other thing I wanted to ask about was the other side of this, which is the Nuggets D. They're allowing 107.9 points per 100 possessions in the playoffs, which is third behind the Knicks and the Lakers. There was 114.7 in the regular season, which is 14th. Is there anything in particular that they have done that you've been impressed by? Just with the same personnel, basically.
But I don't know if there's anything different in terms of like what they're throwing at people. They're just playing with an awful lot of like certainty, determination. And Bruce Brown's been unbelievable what he's brought to them with his energy and his versatility for a guy that size and the number of people he can guard. They're almost just playing with such an edge. That is the difference between anything that you might see in the regular season. I mean, they've been solid. Now, though, they're locked in, man. There's 5 guys on a string, and they've got some very good individual defenders that have really taken on the challenge. And I think he's been a guy that has stood out to me with his energy for them.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I'll say is I think this goes back to the regular season playoff thing, right? And so one of the valuable things about a regular season, 82-game regular season that really informs us about who a team is the strengths, the weaknesses, ways you can exploit, right? Yeah. And so I think you get into a playoff series, and depending on the matchup, again, you can exploit certain things. And so I think the defensive, offensive rating stuff, it's hard because if you run into a bad matchup, like, oh, your defense sucks in the playoffs. Well, yeah, but in an 82-game season, we can afford to running into a bad matchup because guess what? The next night we got the fucking Pistons,
right,
what I mean?
Right,
whoever.
Right.
Like it. Right. So I think it. Some of that, and again, it's like a 5 games here, 6 games, whatever it is. It's hard to really get a lot out of that for me. I think more it's like what is a team doing? What is a team doing well? And I think because I talked about some of this stuff on Monday's show, Tommy, with Jokic being so far up. The only guy, and again, like he's now hurt, but the only guy that they were really playing really heavy drop with was Chris Paul. With Durant and Booker, the vast majority of the time, he's all the way at the level. He's most comfortable doing that, and they just rely on their athletes on the backside to rotate, and they've done a great job. And Michael Porter Jr. a lot of times is that low man, and he's pulling over so far, and they're saying like, he's on Ish Wainwright, he's on Okogie, he's on Torrey Craig. You're gonna like, okay, fuck it. If they swing it to that guy and we get a late contest, like we're willing to live with that.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back, I think, to that matchup thing, right? That's the exploit. That's what we're trying to exploit. We want that guy to beat us. That's no great decisions out there, but if that's the decision, that's the guy we want to sort of live with beating us. We're willing to do that.
So you're calling Game 3?
Yes.
What are your expectations then? What do you think is going to happen? From Phoenix's standpoint, especially.
A question I have is do they mix in a little bit more doubles? So I felt, especially in Game 2, they were up farther on the Jamal Murray pick and rolls than they were in Game 1.
Yeah.
They did a great job. I thought when they got into their 2-man dance with the dribble handoffs, I thought they did a great job of being attached. It was not as pretty as it there was
first game was a joke. I mean,
the same sets, but it was like they were just moving it. Yeah, it was like holy shit.
It's embarrassing. Like they were embarrassing them in a lot of ways.
So I think about that, right? So to me, you're going to put that emphasis on Murray, and you're like, all right, we're going to live because I think Jokic was 4 for 11 with Ayton as the primary defender in Game 1. We're going to live with some one-on-one stuff. Do they double more? Do they make Jokic a passer out of the post? Do they all of a sudden say, you know what, fuck it. We're going to do our best to contain Aaron Gordon's cuts, but if he stays out on the perimeter, we're willing to live with him shooting threes. We're going to rotate, and if he's the guy that gets it, we're willing to live with that. So that's something I'm looking for. I think Murray does have a bounce-back game.
Definitely.
I think he has a bounce-back game. And I think Phoenix tries to muck it up again. I think I said this yesterday on First Take. I think they had a winning formula in that game. And it was some timely 3-point shooting in the fourth quarter for the Nuggets. It was some misses of some open looks on the other end for Phoenix. And it was Jokic's dominance. And because they allowed him to play one-on-one a lot of the game, he ate.
Do you think Phoenix can win the game if Kevin Durant doesn't go for, like what I was saying earlier, like a 35-point night efficiently? Do you think that they can win the game if he goes for 26 and he's under 50% from the field shooting and doesn't get to the line much? Don't you think it's going to take like him being great to beat that team?
Yes, it does, and I think Book has to be great too. But it's funny how we look at greatness, right? Because, if he goes for 30 and shoots 58% and 40% from three, that's an average game.
Oh, yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, they're going to need that at the very least. But I think with I think a big thing you're talking about is now also like a thin team got thinner, and the Book thing playing on the ball, how they look to use him as a scorer and passer when he is the primary ball handler, that's going to be interesting. Does Kevin take on some of that responsibility and just say, fuck it, I'm going to fucking bring Ayton up and we're going to play out of that?
It's a color analyst dream, JJ, that you have going. Like there's so many things to be looking for because they've got a lot of stuff that they've got to, right? Yeah. They've got to put some flex seal on.
The rotation stuff is interesting to me with them because they went with Londale too in game 2. I think Biyombo got the early run, then they went with Londale.
Also, the one thing they were getting in the Clipper series, they haven't gotten so far. Torrey Craig, Okogie, right? Okogie had that great stretch in the regular season where he's making corner threes.
Yeah.
Torrey Craig was great in the Clipper series.
Did they
I need that too.
I'm trying to remember. Did they run with Ayton out in the second half? Did they run Torrey Craig at the 5 at all?
Yeah, he ran some 5
when Gordon was in.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think they run that back. I like that for Phoenix a lot. I like that for Phoenix.
I think they're going to need some 3-point shooting from that collection of other guys, whether it's between them, Craig, Okogie, Damian Lee, Cameron Payne, put a number on it. Those guys probably have to make 10 threes. You know what I mean? To take some of that pressure of Denver just loading up, waiting on Booker and Durant to try to make these very difficult mid-range jump shots. Man, it would loosen things up if they could do it.
I have a question for both you guys. As of May 3rd, are the Nuggets favorites?
I think right now they should be. Right now, as we sit here, they should be.
Yeah.
They've been, it's been the cleanest sheet, what they've done, right? So it's almost not fair to them. They were the number 1 seed, and they've had the cleanest run here, right? Now, look, there's a lot to be still seen in the Boston-Philly series. We haven't seen.
Yes.
And obviously, the way this Golden State Lakers thing plays out, depending on how those teams get through that, whoever that is, that either one of those teams, what they're going to have to do to win that series could be so convincing that maybe one of those teams is going to represent the West. Denver might not be favored in the conference finals as a result of that. But as we sit here right now, I think Denver should be listed as the favorite.
However you want to break it down, whether it is odds or whether it's whatever you call it, the favorite. I said they've been the most impressive team. They've been the most complete team to me.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I've seen where like, oh, there's a big exploitation. There's a big mismatch that people can go after. And I specifically, I think about the potential for that Warriors rematch from last year's first round. The addition of KCP, Christian Brown, Bruce Brown, those are the 3 guys now that are going to be involved in a lot of that post-split action, off-ball action. It's a better matchup. It really is a better matchup for them than it was last year, when I didn't think they had the personnel to play that team. And Golden State, outside of that one game, really just, it was not a good series if you were a Nuggets fan.